What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host that just ate some very good sushi, and it was all on the DL. I feel like an animal. Like I legitimately snuck out to eat sushi. And it was insanely good sushi. And I kept it simple with just the soy sauce, and it hit the spot. Whoa! Zach, and today's subreddit is r/TalesFromTheCustomer. Alright, this story's called, Is This Tip Poisonous? Okay, so some of you have asked for a couple of my other stories about the rotisserie chicken place. First story is a two-part. Part 1. So it's about 1985-ish, and my best friend, we'll call him Fred, and I were off to Alps. For those that didn't read my other story, think rotisserie chicken restaurant whose two-part name describes a neutral country famous for chocolate and folding army pocket knives and ski lodges to grab dinner. Yes, this is the same guy as the last story. As a matter of fact, all of my issues with this particular chain involve Fred. So, I'm starting to think it was him. God, I wish I had context for this. Sorry, Fred. I just threw you under the bus. We get inside and wait to be seated. The hostess comes over and seats us at a table. Okay, so far so good. I notice that there is a little bit of money sitting on the table, so I'm thinking that is probably the tip money from the last customer. I make sure to avoid it, but Fred does not notice it and throws his wallet, keys, and loose change onto the table to empty his pockets, making it more comfortable to sit. I feel that, brother. We're chatting for a minute, and Fred slides all of his stuff over to the other edge of the table, including the tip. The table was a booth, so he swept it towards the little partition wall that the table was attached to. At this point, the hostess comes over to us, very angry, and starts yelling that Fred is a thief and stole the tip money. Fred was not what you call a diplomatic person, so he promptly jumped into the verbal ring with her, and things got loud. I try to calm them down and explain that the money was left there, and he absent-mindedly shoved his stuff, including the tip, to the side. He did not pocket it or try to hide it. He still didn't even realize it was there. I explained to the hostess that I got distracted and failed to tell him it was there. No harm, no foul. Fred proceeds to lambaste her for leaving the tip there in the first place and seating us there, when the table had obviously not been fully cleared. The manager gets involved. The hostess is trying to get the manager to call the cops and charge Fred with theft. The manager is hesitating to escalate. When we asked why the tip was still sitting there, we were told that only the server that served that table can touch that tip. Oh my god, I love that freaking sentence. Only the server that served that table can touch that tip. Wah! The busboy can't move it, nor can the hostess or manager. It can only be that server. I guess they have had some issues among staff with stealing tips. Unfortunately, the server was busy serving other customers and left it there. I said. Apparently she wasn't so busy that she didn't know it was there, as she was the one who cried foul when Fred moved it. So names and phone numbers were taken, and we left, without ever ordering or eating. Part 2. Fast forward 6 months later, and there we are. Fred and I at the same place, hoping for a better experience. We really did like the food there. We enter, and the hostess, a different hostess, seats us at a table where the tip is still sitting on it. We can't believe it, so we refuse to sit there until it is cleared. Several busing staff walk by, and we ask them to please clear the table before we sit down. They reiterate that nobody can touch the tip except for the specific server that served that table. but she is busy serving other customers. We are starting to wonder if management saw us coming and tried to bait us. We asked several times to the busing staff and the hostess. No joy. By now, Fred is sitting in an empty booth across from the table in question. I don't know why they would not just let us sit there, but they wouldn't, and I am standing in the aisle like an idiot, blocking traffic with my considerable size. Finally, the hostess says, You have to sit at your table. You are blocking the aisle, and we need the other booth you are sitting in for other customers. Fred explains that we are not sitting down until the table is cleared, and if it is an issue, we will leave and report the issue to management or head office. She huffs off, and 2 minutes later, a very huffy server comes by and takes her tip with a look like we asked her to give up a kidney. Anticlimactic ending, but we ordered, got food, and life went on. But of course, Fred and I spent the entire trip home complain-festing about the experience. Second story was a little bit more tame. This story happened about 2 years after the last ones. Fred and I were at a different outlet of the same chain in Toronto, and we get seated. We waited probably 15 minutes to get menus. Once we had decided on food, we waited another 20 minutes to give our order to our server. We thought this was a bit strange as the place was almost dead. There were maybe 2 other tables happening. Oh well, maybe they were understaffed. Our server, when she was there, was reasonably pleasant. We waited about 25 minutes for our food to arrive. Fred's was perfect. Mine was akin to last week's leftovers. Half the size of Fred's, with ice-cold chicken and soggy fries. I was guessing it was made for a previous customer, and it sat on the counter for a good hour before being given to me. So Fred is happily munching away, and I am waiting for our server to come by. 10 or 15 minutes later, she comes by, and I ask her to have the kitchen make me a new meal. Her once pleasant demeanor vanished quickly as she suggested they could put my meal in the microwave. I declined, asking firmly but politely for a fresh meal. I took visual note of my meal just in case they did try to reheat it. 25 minutes later. By now, Fred has long since finished his meal. They bring back the same plate of food, marginally warmer, but absolutely inedible. I refused it, and she offered to make me a fresh one for real this time. I said, "No, thank you. Please just give us our bill so I can go have dinner at Golden Arches next door," saying this deliberately loud enough for other patrons to hear. Admittedly not one of my proudest moments, but I was pretty miffed by this point. 20 minutes later, she brings us the bill for both meals. Nope. And I proceeded to have a debate with her over the bill, including my meal, which I did not have more than one bite of. With her forcing me to give them my phone number for the manager, she finally changed the bill, but warned me that he might want to speak to me about it the next day. I told her he was welcome to call me, and I would happily tell him how a fast food joint was able to satisfy my dinner needs for $4, where a self-proclaimed upscale rotisserie chicken venue could not, after being given multiple tries at it, and still tried to charge me $11. This was about 1987-ish. Wow. That's crazy, actually. Hope these stories entertained you. They certainly gave Fred and I something to talk about when they happened. I know that, if he were still with us today, he would get a huge kick out of being able to regale these stories on a media platform such as this. Cheers! First of all, rest in peace, Fred. Thank you for experiencing that experience alongside OP, and OP, thank you for sharing it. What a badass set of stories. I mean, it definitely helps that this is from the 80s. Alright, this story's called I Went Full-Fledged Karen Without Meaning to. Last weekend, boyfriend and I went grocery shopping at Hell No Mart, which is where we always go since it's one-stop shop and I get more for my money there than anywhere else. We are the type to make a list and get only what's on the list. This particular trip, boyfriend wrote beer on the list. No big deal. I'm 35 and he's 43. Understandably, due to Brovid and job losses earlier this year, we applied and got approved for SNAP. I hate using it because there's a stigma that people who don't need it get it and those that really need it can't get it. We only applied out of desperation of going hungry because we were 2 of thousands who had months of unpaid unemployment claims. So we get to the register and start unloading the cart. Boyfriend puts a 6-pack on the belt last since this has to be paid separate from SNAP. I don't know why we do it this way since the registers computers automatically sort what's SNAP eligible and what's not. Cashier isn't too friendly to begin with. Doesn't say hi, ask how we are, normal cashier script, just scans and bags. She gets to the end of our stuff and stops scanning the last few food items and scans the beer. Of course, the age restriction pops up and he very rarely ever gets carded anymore, but I always get carded because for being 35, I still look 18. Oh, hello. She then asks for both IDs. No problem. We hand them to her, and this is where the fun began. Now, before I go further, boyfriend has an ID from Montana because right before we moved, he renewed his ID. And it's good for like 7 years, so he hasn't gotten one from Oregon. Now, keep in mind, we've lived here for a couple of years now. He probably should have gotten it changed over, but honestly, no one cares what state your ID is from if you move to a new state. There is supposedly a law here that said we had 30 days after moving here to change them over, but I kept my Montana ID for 2 years before I switched it over. And I was even pulled over once and told the cop I live here and my ID was from out of state, and he didn't care one bit. Now, if you live in Montana or are familiar with the old IDs, then most people will know about the microglass bleeding anti-counterfeit laminate they used to put over the tops of the licenses. While this made it one of the most secure licenses in the US at the time, this laminate was a pain. It chipped and wore down, making it hard to read the info on the IDs. Well, that's how my boyfriend's looks. Cashier steps back from the register and does this weird hokey-pokey inspection with mine. She's holding it up, tilting it, spinning it. I mean, I've never seen someone do these things with my ID before. Soon she hands it back and then starts looking at my boyfriend's. She does the same hokey-pokey inspection and hands back the ID, and then takes the beer and sets it down on the floor. Presses whatever key to say we aren't of age, and then tells us she won't let us purchase the beer because his ID looks counterfeit. Boyfriend loses his cool. He's 43. He's never been accused of having a fake ID, ever. I was even offended when she said that. I started to ask her what was wrong with my ID that I couldn't make the purchase, and she refused to say anything other than she won't sell. At this point, I turn into Karen and start telling her to call a manager over because it was total beaver sausage that this was happening. Now, I understand that every state has laws about carding, and I worked in convenience stores at one point in my life and went through the same training. But we were told if the person has enough gray hair or wrinkles, then carding doesn't have to happen. I was trained, if in doubt, then card to be safe. Boyfriend pulled his mask off to show his almost entirely white goatee to her to prove he was well over buying age, but she wasn't having it. Boyfriend is getting madder because she wouldn't call a manager over when I asked her repeatedly to do so. But of course, he's not really helping the situation any, which then in turn causes the cashier to just completely stop scanning the rest of my groceries. At this point, there is a lengthy line behind us and people are starting to notice the commotion. I'm honestly surprised we didn't get filmed and went viral for this. I see a yellow-vested customer service manager and told the cashier, "There's a CSM, grab her." So that's when she finally called the manager over. Manager comes over and boyfriend immediately starts saying how the cashier wouldn't sell when he's clearly of age. Manager asked cashier what her grounds were, and before she could respond, boyfriend said, "She told me my ID looks counterfeit and it's not. It's a valid Montana state-issued license." So then cashier says she never said anything about him having a fake ID. The people behind me spoke up and even said she did. In fact, say it looked counterfeit. So now she's lying to her manager. Cashier continues telling the manager that her trainings taught her what to look for and when to reject an ID. I'm guessing she was new to the retail world and hadn't dealt with too many out-of-state IDs and hadn't been carding people for very long. In my years of cashiering, you can always tell the newbies because they will literally card everyone, including regulars. Manager says there is nothing she can do because it's cashier's decision to sell to us or not, and she chose not to. Cashier finally finished scanning my groceries but didn't bother to bag them. So I'm just frustrated with everyone at this point and said, "Oh, so now I have to bag my own stuff too," which I probably should have just said nothing and went on about bagging it myself. I got home and felt bad for the way things went down, but later on, boyfriend and I started making jokes about his fake ID. We ended up getting his beer from a gas station where neither of us got carded this time, which made us laugh even more about the inconsistencies about carding for alcohol purchases here in Oregon. Pot purchases are different and way more strict, so we always know to have IDs ready when entering the dispensary, because that is one place where even 90-year-old Grandma Edna isn't exempt from carding. Okay, that sounds so freaking annoying to have to deal with. Imagine being 43 years old, literally twice the drinking age, and then a year, and being declined your beer because your ID looks fake. That's ridiculous. What I would have done is I'd have been like, "Alright, bye," then left to my car, put my stuff away, and then just come back, get my beer, and go to another cashier's line because screw them. This story's called I'm a Karen, but different. This has been going on for years, but I started paying attention more as my kids got old enough to be embarrassed by my asking for the manager nearly everywhere we go. Small stores, large stores, restaurants, you name it, and I found a reason to ask for a manager. But it's not what you think. I look for people who are doing good, employees who go above and beyond. Anywhere I find great service, I want the manager to hear about it right now. Managers so frequently only get to deal with people who are super upset and or entitled. So as someone who has worked retail, was a horrible server, delivered pizza, and knows these professions are often overworked and underpaid, I offer praise for the good I find everywhere I go. Until I moved a couple of years ago, my sister and I spent a lot of our Black Friday shopping time taking photos of awesome employees to post on social media and email to corporate the following day, only with permission. It always makes shopping and dining more fun to know I'm going to ask for the manager every chance I get. Edited to add, I always ask first before taking a photo and explain exactly where I'm hoping to post, who I'm going to tag, and what I'm going to say. You're all right. It is not okay to post without someone's permission, and no is a complete sentence. If they say no, I still send email or contact forms to corporate about my awesome experiences the following week. Not wanting your pic posted doesn't disqualify a person from being recognized. Also, I don't ask for a manager every day. What I do every day is look for positive interactions with people. So when something awesome happens, I'm ready. Making positive comments does not replace tipping, ever. Thank you for the awards. Yeah. Lastly, my real name may or may not be Karen. Wow, what a very kind thing for you to do for people that don't get it a lot, when they probably should at least a little bit more. I'm sure when it happens, it makes them feel pretty good, and so that's a great thing. We should all try to follow suit. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.